Okay, so today I'm going to be showing you guys how to create your budget in a notebook. So pen and paper instead of using a computer or an app. So the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you date this properly. And you're going to write that up in the upper right hand corner. Next, you're going to write your income for the month, and that's going to go in your upper left hand corner. This is going to be a total of all the money you have to budget with. All right, so the next thing you're gonna do after you have this is we're gonna start mapping out our buckets or our categories for the month. Now we are gonna start with our bills. These are gonna be any recurring charges that you have every single month. Usually these are gonna be set numbers, but you may have to estimate for some of these. All right, so after you've mapped out all of your bills, we're gonna move on to the next section, which is our living expenses. So we're gonna draw a line here. We're going to living expenses. So these are going to be the things that you need on a day-to-day basis, but aren't necessarily recurring bills. Then after we map these out, I'm gonna move over here to the right, and this is going to be our fun money. Now this is anything that you don't need to survive. It's truly a luxury, and if you got rid of it, it may not be fun, but you'd be okay. You also want to put in this category any non-essential subscriptions, such as Spotify or Netflix, anything that you could get rid of if you needed to. Now, after you've mapped this out, we're gonna draw another line, and down here is gonna be our savings category. Here is where we're gonna list all of the things that we are saving for. So it might be as simple as money in your savings account, this might be an emergency fund, or this might be a vacation fund or something big you wanna get. So after you've mapped out all of the categories with which you currently spend, now we're gonna start plugging in numbers. So let's start from the top. To do this, you wanna make sure you have a calculator so that you can make sure all your numbers are super accurate. To start, we're gonna put our total income into your calculator, and we're gonna start subtracting from here. So to start, let's look at your rent. Let's say your rent is $1,200. So let's start by subtracting that. Then we move to the next category. And one thing to note with your bills is these are very rounded numbers. However, you wanna make sure that if you have an exact bill, you are putting down that exact amount. So if your phone bill is actually $72.21, you need to make sure you're writing in $72.21. This should never be a rounded number if you have an exact bill. You only want this to be a rounded number if you're not totally sure month to month what it's gonna be. This is just your best guess. All right, once you're done with the bills category, we're gonna move down into the living expenses category. Now these numbers you can't really get exact, so we're just gonna estimate. Try to figure out what you usually spend on this category and then put that number in. Keep in mind this budget is gonna change from month to month, so don't stress out too much about having an exact or perfect number right at this point. Next, we have our fun money category. Now, because these are things that aren't necessarily essential, we'll start with any subscriptions you have, and then we'll work out putting down the things you'd like to spend. And keep in mind, if it's an exact bill, write the exact amount. Now, what this does is this leaves us with our total amount of money left in our budget to move into our savings, whether that be vacation, our emergency fund, or just to make our savings account bigger. So at this point, we can decide what we want to do with this. We always recommend putting something into savings unless you've 100% reached your saving goals and you're okay with where you're at. Now, something really important to note is by the end of this process, this number should be 0. You should never have money left over that's not in your budget. A good budget budgets every single dollar. Remember that. Now at this point, you have your rough budget created, okay? So what you're gonna do at this point is you're going to look this over and make sure that you're comfortable with the way this looks. Now, if one of your dreams and your biggest goals is to go on lots of vacations, maybe you don't actually need $200 to go out to eat. Maybe you can knock this down to 100 and move an extra 100 over here. Or maybe if you're really hardcore, you can knock this down to 50 and put another 150 over here. Does that make sense? So all you're gonna do is look this over, make any changes you wanna make to make it match your dream and your goals and the things you really wanna do. If you make any changes, I would recommend rewriting this out so that you have a clean budget because you are going to be updating this throughout the month, and the less confusing this is, the better. Once you're completely comfortable with your budget, we're actually going to create a separate page for each of these middle categories. This is to track your expenses through the month and make sure you're staying on track. So to start, we'll start with groceries. We'll pick a new page in our notebook or a new loose leaf page, and we're going to start by dating once again. Then we're going to write our category in the upper left-hand corner, followed by the total amount budgeted, which we have is $300. Cool. Now we're gonna add a few headers to this page so that we can track our money throughout the month. First, we're going to put our date all the way to the left. Then we're going to add a where section. This is basically just what store or place you spent your money at. Next is going to be the amount. And lastly is going to be the remaining balance. Now we're going to repeat this process for every single one of our middle sections. One thing to note is that we are not going to create a separate page for anything that is subscription based. We're actually going to update that on this front page. So we don't need to make one for Netflix or Spotify in this example. So now that we have all of our individual pages mapped out for these categories, I want to teach you how you're actually going to update this throughout the month. So I like using a different color of marker to update just because it makes it a little easier to see. So let's start with the top on how to update this budget. In order to update all of the bills, what you're gonna do is you're going to start by drawing a little line or an arrow, and you're going to write when you've paid the bill, paid, the amount, and then the date. Now, if this is an exact bill, you shouldn't have any extra money at the end of this. So if your rent is exactly $1,200, you're not gonna have any money left. However, when you're looking at your electric bill, you might have some money left over from your initial budget, or you may go over depending on the month. So here's how you're gonna write that out. You're gonna draw your little arrow, paid, total amount. So let's say maybe you spent $98.20, write the date, and then in parentheses, we're going to write the amount that was left, $1.80. Cool. Now, if you went over for some reason, we're gonna put a little minus in front of this, and that means that category is over instead of extra. So you'll basically complete the process for all of these. Okay, so this is how you update that top section. Now, here's how you're gonna update these middle sections. Now, once again, anything that was a subscription, you can treat the exact same way. Okay, now here's how you're gonna update these other categories that aren't set or recurring bills. So when you spend money on groceries, let's say, you're gonna come into your individual page for groceries and you're going to write the date of the expense, where you spent it, you're gonna write the amount, and then you're gonna write how much you have left. Now the way you're gonna calculate how much you have left is you're gonna take your total number minus the amount you spent. So 300 minus 50 is $250. Now, every time that you buy groceries, you're going to add that expense here and subtract the amount from the last remaining total. So if you spent something else and you spent $25, your new remaining total is gonna be $250 minus 25. So your new total will be $225. And you'll do that for all of the different categories you allocated. So every time you put gas in your car, make sure to input that here. And every time you buy some kind of supplies, toilet paper, cleaning products, you put that in here. You can also write exactly what it is in your where category if you want to be a little more detailed. So now at this point, let's talk about what you do at the end of the month when you actually need to tie out this entire budget. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go in each of your individual categories and look at the last remaining number. So if we had $225 left, we're going to come to this front page, and next to our groceries budget, we're going to write $225. And once again, if you went over, this would be negative, and you would write that negative $225 next to the initial budgeted amount. So for the remainder of this example, I'm gonna just pretend that we spent the exact amount in these other budgets. So now what we're gonna do at the end of this is we're gonna take all of our extra or over money and we're gonna get a total amount down here. Now the best way to do this, if you have any categories where you went over, is we're gonna start by adding all of the extra numbers, so all the money you have left, and then subtract any money that you went over. And that leaves us, for this example, $228.20. So that's what we would write right here. Cool, so what do you do with this extra money? The cool thing is you get to do whatever you want with this extra money because you were awesome with your budget and you saved money. So we recommend putting this towards the thing that's most important to you. If that means putting it in savings or your emergency fund, then that's fine, dump it in there. But if you're really wanting to go on a vacation and you were really good with your money and you have money in savings, then we would recommend putting this towards what you value most in life, which for us is always going on vacations. So that pretty much sums up how you're going to create your paper budget. If you guys have any questions at all, please let us know in the comments below and we would be more than happy to help you. So we love you guys, go budget. Bye.